Okay, well, we will go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of information to cover and about an hour to do so. So we will try to cover everything, get all of your questions answered. But of course, if you do have any questions at any time, send them in the chat. Feel free to interject because I'm sure if you're thinking it, then somebody else is too. Oh, and I do see Samantha on now. So Samantha, we'll go ahead and get started.
Hello, great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. We're thrilled that you're taking some time out to prepare for our upcoming trip to DC. We anticipate having a wonderful group of advocates. From this call alone, we've got quite a big crew coming up this year from our 3 states, and it's the right time, which we'll talk about in just a moment, for us to be on the Hill advocating for credit unions, sharing your stories, and asking lawmakers to do their job and help us serve our members. So with that, I also want to start, as everyone gathered here knows, this is, I'm not going to call it the Super Bowl, but a little bit for our advocacy team. This is our Super Bowl. We love this time getting together to go to our nation's capital, show the message of this big collective group of grassroots in the credit union space. So if you've never been to the GAC before, actually raise your hand or give us a thumbs up on Zoom. I'd love to see if there's anybody here who's never been before to a GAC. I see a few. There you are. Hey, welcome. We're glad you're braving it and that you're willing to come to DC with 5,000 of your favorite credit union friends. And for all of our experts on the line, I see a lot of people who have been there plenty before, and they are great folks to turn to and ask your questions and partner up with as they share their expert trip tips. Now, the other thing I want to say is that the teams worked really, really hard, but this is a conversation and questions are welcome. As you know, Grace is a fantastic expert. As she's explaining something, don't hesitate to ask more questions. We want all of you to feel very comfortable when we're in our offices with lawmakers or meeting with regulators. This is your time to shine, and we really want you all to be equipped with the right messaging points so that you can have direct conversations, and it's less about staff talking and more about you all sharing the message of credit unions. So with that, Grace, I know we've got slides. I didn't know if you wanted to start them just yet. There we go. So obviously, if you don't know, the event is the 3rd through the 7th, but I know many folks travel in on Friday or even Saturday and Sunday, as there's a lot of pre-event that goes around the GAC. But one of the reasons I said it's very impactful and important for us to be there right now, and Grace will go into this in greater detail, but there are a number of priorities for Congress, which include, funding the government. And so it's a very noisy time in DC. And on that flip side, there's a lot that's impacting credit unions in the regulatory arena or even the potential legislative arena. And we need to mobilize Congress. So we've got to get their attention. And there's no better way to get their attention than their favorite credit union friends showing up en masse in their office to remind them of what's important back home in the district, because they can get a bit distracted by the headlines in DC. The other piece of this is obviously we have such a unique industry, and our grassroots is our strength. And so when we come and we fill an office and there's 14 faces and friends that they know, that is not very common with other lobbying groups you'll see on the Hill. It's a handful of folks. It's the leadership. Our volunteers are a special part of, the message we send when we go to DC, and it's about, hey, this is a cooperative. We are made up by our people and governed by our people. And as a reminder, we've brought those people with us today. And I think that really helps us hit home that we are different and we are surely a cooperative and not just a for-profit financial service. So you all know that, though. I'm speaking to the choir. I'm just so thrilled that we're all going to get together and get to our nation's capital. With that, I'll hand it over to our expert, Grace, who will walk us through our agenda today and prepping you all for the details. But don't be shy with questions in the chat. I appreciate each of you.
Thank you, Samantha. And yes, we are thrilled to have probably about 300 or so attendees from our footprint. So fantastic group from LSCU. Appreciate y'all making time. We know it's busy enough back home where you are. There are enough pressures on your credit union and as you all as executives, but you guys making time to advocate makes all the difference in pushing these issues forward. So as you all know, America's Credit Unions, formerly CUNA, they have a full conference agenda for you. That is available online, as well as on the America's Credit Unions app, which I believe goes live tomorrow. So if you have that downloaded, you should see some information as of tomorrow, if not today. But in addition to what America's Credit Unions does, LSCU, we always organize LSCU specific meetings because, of course, we want to maximize your time while you're in DC and make the most of your time. So we'll walk you through briefly, beginning with Sunday. Of course, we've got our welcome reception Sunday evening at our host hotel, the Courtyard Marriott. You should have a calendar invite for that. If you do not, let me know. And skipping down to Tuesday evening, we've got our lawmaker reception in which we will honor our 3 lawmakers of the year. So you all know, the full times are 5 to 6:30, with presentations and remarks really getting kicked off around 5:30. So definitely be there for that. One thing I do want to mention about the Tuesday night reception is that while our Florida lawmaker, Kat Cammack, is expected to be there about 5:30, the Senate has votes at 5:30. Both of our Alabama and Georgia lawmakers are senators. So Katie Britt is going to be stepping out of votes about 6:15 and will be there at about that time. So if you have dinner plans, if you're an Alabamian, please try to stick around so we can recognize Katie. Similarly, in Georgia, we are trying to get Senator Warnock to step out about 6:15 as well. So we'll keep you posted on that, but please plan to be there so we can give a big LSCU welcome and a big thank you to those lawmakers who have gone above and beyond for credit unions. So going back to the agenda, on Monday, we will be meeting with the WUNS director. So the WUNS office at the NCUA is who examines. Now, it was those over 10 billion. That threshold has been bumped up to 15. But with the NCUA's recent announcement that they are going to be increasing consumer compliance exams and really focusing on those credit unions between the 7 to 15 billion mark, we encourage anyone who is either within that range or approaching that threshold or just interested in what they should be aware of when it comes to exams to attend this. If you are interested, please let me know along with any of these other regulatory meetings because we do have limited space. But again, we want to maximize your time. So then Tuesday morning, we really encourage you, if you are going to be on the Hill with us on Wednesday, please attend this in-person legislative and regulatory briefing. We are going to be covering any last minute changes because you all know it wouldn't be a DC fly-in if the situation was not fluid. And as Samantha mentioned, with the 2 government shutdown deadlines literally bookending our trip, there is a good chance there will be some updates. So please plan to join us at our hotel for the briefing. We will then be joined by NCUA Chairman Todd Harper and our newest board member, Tanya Otska. So it'll be a great welcome and introduction to LSCU credit unions. So please make sure to join. This will be her first time addressing our members in person. So really excited we're getting some time with her. So we will then wrap up. We'll take a quick break for lunch and then bring in Vice Chairman Kyle Houtman. And then towards the end of the day, right before our reception, we are going to be hosting, thanks to Kabir. Kabir is on, but his friend, the Deputy Director from the Small Business Administration, to talk about some lending opportunities for credit unions. So there is the potential that we get another meeting or two in between this 1:30 and 4 o'clock mark. We'll be sure to let y'all know, and all schedule changes, all events, everything can be found on the LSCU events app, which we'll get into more later, as well as on our website. Again, we got our lawmaker reception all day long on Wednesday. We'll be on the Hill. So many of you have asked about flying home. You are welcome to fly home at your leisure on Thursday. We do not have any meetings scheduled on Thursday. As always, something is subject to change, but we try to avoid that so you guys can go home. I know it's a long week. All righty. And so when you guys are on the Hill, and I did just get a question in the chat about Hill meetings. If you go to our website or on the events app, you can see that meetings are continuing to get uploaded as they get confirmed. So be sure to check those out. But ways that you can be effective and successful while on the Hill. So of course, we are going to provide you all our attendee booklet, which will have all of our talking points, all of our priorities. We'll dive into those issues in just a little bit, but those materials will be provided to you in person at our briefings and at our receptions. And we've got one last detail we're waiting to hear back from, and we'll get to that in a minute, but these will be emailed to you as well, digital copies, but of course we'll have those hard copies for you in person too. So of course we want to make sure that you are armed with all the resources you need to be successful. And while that comes to materials, there's some things that you should know ahead of time, like dressing in business attire, giving yourself plenty of time to get through security. There will be the State of the Union will be given March 7th by the president. And so there is the expectation that Wednesday afternoon, that security may get a little bit tight as they work to accommodate the president naturally. So if you get in the Hill prior to about 1 or so, get into a House office building or Senate office building, I would stay inside the buildings and use a tunnel system to get around, just because that afternoon security may get tricky. But definitely give yourself plenty of time to get to offices. Get there about 10-15 minutes early and wait until other credit union attendees are there. We have tried to avoid having just one person show up for a meeting, so you will definitely see others arrive. And so make sure that you are waiting to go into the office until others are there. However, if your meeting is at 1 o'clock and you see it's 1:01, go ahead and head in. Some others may be running late, but don't keep the member waiting. We will be providing the one-pager of our issue positions to offices ahead of time. So the staff, the member, they should be briefed on our issues. However, there's always the chance that an office may have to pivot. A member may get pulled into a last-minute hearing, briefing, Lord knows what. So just be mindful, and also just know that in the event that the member is not in the meeting, that's okay, because it is staff who a lot of times, you guys know, call the shots. They're the ones actually signing on to bills, taking the diligent notes and making things happen. So please be sure to show staff the same grace and respect and appreciation that you would show the member. Keep a stack of business cards. And also keep your talking points in hand, the booklet, the one pager, all of those things. So that way you're equipped with all the information that you need. And also they've got what they need so they can follow up if necessary. We will be taking pictures so we can highlight on social. Be sure to do the same so you can show your members back home that you are advocating on their behalf and making a difference for them. When you follow up with offices, a lot of times staff, they will provide you their own business cards, follow up with a thank you, and also a reminder of our policy priorities and say, it was great to meet you. We would love to have Congressman X sign on to this bill or do whatever, but just a follow up always helps. And lastly, but most importantly, participate in the meetings. You guys are there to share your story, to voice your concerns and talk about the direct impact to credit unions. So we want to encourage everyone to participate, and also, of course, keep the discussion to credit union issues. So while we've covered how to be successful, I'm going to tell you what to do to be unsuccessful. I can switch sides. Okay, so these are topics to avoid. So if you take away anything from this meeting, take away 2 things. 1, download the LSCU events app. And 2, don't talk about these things in Hill meetings. We at LSCU don't want to get you in trouble. We don't want to see you go to jail, and we don't want to go to jail ourselves. So, of course, the Tuesday before our Wednesday Hill meetings is going to be Super Tuesday in Alabama. Within 2 weeks after our Hill meetings, we will have primary elections in Florida and Georgia. So there's a good chance that the member of Congress will come in Alabama. We have 2 incumbents running against each other. One will be pretty bummed. And while it's okay to say, we'll miss working with you, in Florida and Georgia, if your member is like, hey, remember to go vote for me in 2 weeks, just smile and say, we look forward to seeing you in the district. There are a lot of things, there are very strict ethics laws. And so again, we don't want to see you or us or put the member in an uncomfortable position. There are some times when, actually there are a lot of times, and there are a lot of members, you all know them, who will come in They will tell you, they will rant to you about the issues that are top of mind to them. Like we have our priorities, they have their priorities too. And of course, as politicians, they get paid to have opinions. So they may come in, they may go on their rant that has nothing to do with credit unions. They may talk about the presidential election, this administration. They may talk about the scam impeachment or sham impeachment hearings that'll be taking place. Try your best to keep it to credit union issues. There's likely or there potential to be a Senate impeachment hearing on Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. In that case, whatever the issue is that someone may be talking about, find a way to pivot and say, you know what? Another controversial topic we wanted to talk to you about is the CFPB. But find a way to spin it and to bring it back to credit union issues. But just know a lot of times there's going to be, there will be members who will walk in, they will want to share their spiel, let them go, and then bring it back home to credit union issues. Don't talk about fundraising. If they're like, I've got a fundraiser coming up. Okay, smile and nod. Don't talk about money. Let's not talk about how much they've raised. Let's not talk about giving them money. Keep that off of the hill. Those are unofficial conversations. So again, avoid these topics. While we'd love to have credit union members on Capitol Hill, let's not get into their personal finances. Some of them may say, I love being a member of AmFirst, and that is great. We love having you as a member. But let's move on and not get into the specifics. Any questions on what to avoid or what to do to be successful? If not, we will move on to what you can expect during the Hill meetings. So we will open up the meeting and introduce the lawmaker as well as our credit unions who may say, Congressman X, we're so excited to have this fantastic group of Georgia credit unions here from the district representing X 100,000 members. And then the lawmaker will likely address the group. Sometimes the lawmaker may turn it over to you immediately and allow you to transition and go from issue to issue. That is our time to shine. That is our time to walk through. We've got 5 major priorities. 2 of them are tied together. So really you can look at kind of 3 priorities. So in the 30 minutes that meetings typically last, you should be able to walk through them. But in the case that you don't, let me also say our number 1 issue is the Credit Card Competition Act interchange. If you go into a meeting and the only thing you talk about is interchange, that's a good meeting. That means that the office was engaged, that they wanted to learn our perspective. So don't feel like you have to fly through issues. They are in priority order, but just make the best use of time. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll take a photo, of course. So one thing to touch on briefly, if you were with us last GAC or at our fall Hike the Hill, something that we have recently implemented are credit union team leads. And that is to ensure that the conversation is local, it is constituent focused, and we talk about the direct impact to their district and to credit unions. We don't want it to be lobbyist led. You guys are in town. They want to hear from you. They hear from lobbyists all day, every day. So we want the experts to weigh in. So again, we want to encourage everyone to speak, but we do have team leads for meetings to help kick off the conversation. We hope that in bringing up an issue, everyone will chime in. And if you are interested in being a team lead, we will be meeting after this call. So feel free to let us know and stay on afterward. But we've coined the term Core 4. There may be more, there may be less, but just to ensure that we've at least got one person showing up to a meeting, hopefully more. For those of you in Florida, you know that with 30 offices, we can get a little stretched thin. So we try to keep or to be sure that there is at least a handful of people showing up. But again, the goal with this is to ensure that everyone gets to speak. A lot of times when we have first timers, we want you to speak, but 2, it's helpful to see another credit union speak as opposed to someone who does this every day. So if you take away anything else, know that we want everyone to participate and speak up and share the impact on your credit union. And so those are some of the tips to be effective and be successful. We've got a lot of resources online to help you as well. And we have got Matt Willey, who leads our grassroots advocacy, who is going to walk you through some of this information.
Yeah, hello everybody. Like Grace said, I'm Matt Willie. I am the Deputy Director of Grassroots Advocacy. I've met a lot of you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in DC. One of the easiest things you can do to make your time just a little bit better in DC is to utilize the app. The LSCU Events app this year, we've taken some of the comments from folks to make it a little bit easier, a little bit more user-friendly. Everything is on there for you. So if you are in a meeting or if you're planning to go to a meeting and you pull it up, you will be able to see exactly what time the meeting is, where it is, what issues to discuss. And I'll show you a screenshot in just a second. There you go. And so when you pull up the app, this is what it'll look like. It'll show you everything that you need to know about that specific meeting. Inside the app, if you download it from either from the Google Play Store or your App Store, just literally look for LSCU events. It'll pop up. You'll be able to download it, and then you'll be able to use it the whole entire time you're there. And not only does it have meeting details, but it has the congressional maps. If you're like, I'm not sure what district I'm in, totally fine, completely understand. They've also redrawn some of the districts, so it's a little different for some folks. So I would say make sure that you check it out if you're not sure. The other things we've added this year are we did have the Capitol Hill map last year, but this year we actually have places you can eat. Inside the Capitol, there's a place on the app where you can find out if you're in the Hart building and you're like, how do I get a sandwich? We have now got that in there for you. We did not have that last GAC. That's something we added for Hike the Hill. People really liked it. We also added restaurants around the hotel and broke them into categories for y'all. So if you're looking for something specific, maybe you want to go to a sports bar, watch a game, we've got some of that on there. Maybe you want to go to a steakhouse, we've got some of those in there. So take advantage of the app, look at all those kind of different things. The other thing that will be uploaded, I just checked, it's not quite there yet because I think we're still finalizing it. You will have your legislative talking points and your regulatory talking points on the app. So if you forget your paper or somebody steals it from you or whatever happens, it will be on the app. You'll be able to pull it up there and you can see what our talking points are going to be for all the legislative meetings and for our regulatory meetings. The other thing I will note about the app that we did this year and last year, and Grace mentioned this earlier, is we put in there things to discuss. And then if we know things not to discuss. So if you have a member who is really not a fan of a certain thing, and we have learned that over the years or over the last couple Hike the Hills or GACs, we have noted that in the map. And so what we often have folks do is before they go into the room, they'll look at the app, they'll go through it and be like, okay, I know we do not want to talk to a good one I can remember off the top of my head is John Rutherford in Florida. He is not a fan of safe banking. It's not a road you want to go down with Representative Rutherford. And so in the app, we have made sure to note, don't discuss safe banking because he's just not a fan of it. So that is a good thing to pull out for you. And the other thing I'll say real quickly, just here about the app, is if you're in DC and you think of a way we can make it better, let us know because we want to do that. And we've tried to continually improve this every iteration, make it just a little bit easier and a little bit better for folks. The last thing to touch on here for y'all, Grace, did you have something?
Yeah, real quick, I was going to add, so some offices you'll see like certain issues, like here you see under Congressman McCormick, support of military members and military bases being on armed services. We really want to cater to his interests. And Matt mentioned some members, there will be a very specific, you see discuss, there's a very specific do not discuss, but there is also another little nuance there. Some members, there is a tread lightly. So for example, Mike Rogers in Alabama, Barry Loudermilk, so we got a few Barrys, Barry Loudermilk in Georgia, they're very close to their banker buddies. So like on the Veteran Member Business Loan Act, which we'll dive into the issues in a minute, you'll see that it just says tread lightly. Don't make it a bank versus a credit union issue. So just know we try to be mindful of that. And the other thing too is the reason that the maps are included is one, so of course, hopefully you know who your member of Congress is. But if you know that you've got branches in a few different districts, we want you to make the most use of your time. We want you to attend as many meetings as you can. So please know that meetings are open. There aren't any COVID restrictions as of today. Of course, things could change tomorrow. You never know. But yeah, we want to maximize your time while in DC. So please take advantage of those.
And on the maps, just for just so y'all know, we have not changed the Alabama one. We're waiting. So if you're that map is going to look different in November, but for right now, they're using the map that they still have. So just in case you're wondering, like, oh, my district may have changed, it's going to, but for this purpose, Grace and I talked about it, and we wanted to keep the old map because that's how they're running in the primary. So anyway, the next piece of this is to just a plug for Project Zip Code. If you have not done this yet, this is incredibly helpful. Again, when you go into the meetings and you can talk about how many members you actually have in a representative's or a senator's district or in your footprint, it really brings it home, and it drives the message that you are constituents of each of these representatives, and you have people in their backyard. Because constituents, for those who are first timers, those are also voters for these folks. So when you say I have 300,000 members, or there are 300,000 credit union members in your district, that for a lawmaker, they hear, oh, that's a lot of people and a lot of people that vote. So what we would like to do is just plug one more time. If you haven't had a chance to do Project Zip Code, you can still do it. And it gives you the ability to just have a granular level of detail when you go into a legislator's office, and you're able to talk to them about how many people are they may see in a given day who go to a specific credit union in that district. And the other thing it does for us, just one more plug on this, is it breaks it down into the state legislative districts as well, which for CUNA GAC or for GAC, it's not what we're using it for, but it also is beneficial when we get back and when we're doing state level lobbying and government affairs work, because we're able to break it down to even smaller districts. So it's an incredibly invaluable tool, and I just can't recommend it if you haven't done it. Please do it before you head to DC.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, election day is top of mind for a lot of members. And while we are not going to bring up the election, when they hear, a great segue when you are speaking on an issue or just introducing yourself is, my name is Grace Newcomb. I represent X Credit Union. We've got 30,000 members in your district. They're thinking election day. They're like, that's 30,000 votes. So good way to introduce yourself as well. Thanks, Matt. Alrighty, so transitioning into issues. Before we do this, any questions so far? And feel free to continue dropping them in the chat if preferred. Okay, if not, as a reminder, the attendee packets and one-pagers are going to be provided to you via email very soon, and we will also have hard copies at our receptions and at our briefing, so you can pick them up in person as well, but want to give you time to study up while you are on the plane, or if you just get some free time. So our top 5 priorities are the Credit Card Competition Act, some financial fraud language, overdraft services, CFPB oversight, and the Veteran Member Business Loan Act. As I mentioned before, 2 of these issues are kind of grouped together. We've grouped these 2 together and overdraft and CFPB together, given some recent issues. So we'll walk you through the issues. Just know again that the packets are going to be provided to you with greater detail, but of course we're cramming a lot into an hour. So again, we'll walk through more of these at our in-person briefing. Another plug, be sure to attend that. But just know that we are running up against a lot of different things. So to kind of give you a state of play and an understanding of everything going on in DC at the time of GAC, again, we are flying in March 3rd, leaving March 7th. That puts us right smack in the middle of 2 government shutdown deadlines. The Federal Reserve has a proposed rule to cap debit card interchange fees. There is a lot of discussion and momentum around interchange regulation today at this very moment. So it is very timely that all of you will be in DC. In addition to the Federal Reserve's rule, and let me also share that rule has come because of extreme and unrelenting merchant lobbying. It's not just taking place at the Hill, it's taking place at regulatory agencies. So it's really maximized our time, or taken a lot of our time, and encouraged or required us to really dive into relationships with other regulatory agencies. But in addition to what's going on the regulatory front, Senator Durbin has called for an interchange hearing on April 9th in the Senate Judiciary Committee, where he is the chair. So he is hoping to bring in the CEOs of Visa and MasterCard, as well as airline CEOs. He really wants to focus as well on convenience stores. So there's a chance that members, additional proponents of interchange regulation are there as well. But we will stay tuned. We are pushing to get a credit union executive to testify if we can. But we'll keep you posted as that finalizes, because the hearing has not yet been finalized. But Durbin is putting a lot of pressure on members in the media. So just know there's a lot of continued momentum around this. And if that wasn't enough, we have new co-sponsors of the Credit Card Competition Act. We have Senator Hawley of Missouri, who is a Republican, and Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island. I believe it's Rhode Island. Sorry, somewhere up north. It's been a long week. Senator Reed. We also have another interested Democrat from Pennsylvania, John Fetterman. They are releasing co-sponsors in pairs of two, one Republican and one Democrat. So because they've got another interested Dem, there's a lot of interest in getting another Republican on board. So just know there's a lot of pressure on our footprint, especially, you all know, you've heard from us. I know you're tired, you're ready to be done hearing from us on interchange, but you've heard from us about legislation at the state level that's percolating and continues to move. So especially in Florida, for example, where interchange advanced in probably one of the top two states, farther than any other state in the country, there's gonna be a lot of pressure on our delegation. So just know that there's a lot working against us. But what is interesting, hopefully you all saw the news of the Discover and Capital One merger. Discover is expected to become one of the largest issuers now, which means that that's the market at work. The market is doing its thing without legislation. And so you may hear that get mentioned. There are a number of members of Congress who are opposed to the merger because they said that allows the biggest banks to be even more powerful. What's kind of ironic is that Senator Hawley, one of the new sponsors of the bill, is against the merger. So, you know, it's an interesting position for a Republican to take against anti-free market. But anyways, we'll get to kind of the political positions in just a minute. So just keep this information in your back pocket. So our top 3 priorities, let me check the chat real quick. Okay. So our top priorities, again, number 1, Credit Card Competition Act. If this is the one issue you talk about the entire meeting, that is successful, that is effective, because there is a huge push to get the Credit Card Competition Act signed onto the next appropriations package. As we mentioned, the government is running up against 2 potential deadlines to fund the government. Back in January, Congress passed a laddered CR, which meant that of the 12 appropriations bills that typically get passed in regular order, instead they broke those up those agencies. And so that's why we have 2 different deadlines that we're working to meet. Right now, there is no consensus whatsoever among appropriators on how we are going to fund the government moving forward. If that is funding the government for the full term up until the end of the fiscal year, or doing another short-term funding bill like a CR. And CR stands for continuing resolution. Let me also clarify that. So there is an effort by Marshall. He tried this last September, and we've gotten word that he's going to do this again, that he is going to hold up the next appropriations bill in an effort to get the Credit Card Competition Act attached to it. And something else for you to be aware of, the CCCA is also known as, you may hear it referred to as the swipe fee bill or the payments bill. So just know that that's what a member is referencing. If you hear that, obviously Credit Card Competition Act is a mouthful, but this bill is essentially an extension of the original Durbin Amendment. You guys will remember the Durbin Amendment, which was applied to debit card interchange fees. Alternatively, this bill applies to credit card interchange fees. So it has bumped up the impacted threshold from 10 billion underneath the original Durbin to 100 billion. However, we know that regardless of threshold, this is going to have a tremendous impact on all financial institutions, just as we saw under the original Durbin. So they bumped this up with the quote compromise that this is not going to impact small financial institutions. But again, regardless of threshold, back in 2010, we saw a 30% reduction in interchange investment income. And so regardless of threshold, so again, we know that everyone will be impacted by this, and especially the smaller issuers. The Federal Reserve, we've got a lot of talking points for you that we'll provide, but the Federal Reserve found that smaller issuers absorb higher transaction costs. So you guys are going to be impacted much more than the largest issuers. Again, regardless of threshold. And so you may get asked, why would they do this? And there is the claim that Visa and MasterCard have a monopoly on the system. But again, remember that Capital One and Discover just announced a merger that's going to make them one of the largest players. So allow the market to do its thing. When you're talking to Republicans, you can really lean into their partisan preference and say, it's kind of an interesting position for Republicans to take a position on, because this is an anti-free market bill. This really mandates government fixed price controls in the market, and it's anti-business. For Democrats, really lean into the impact on marginalized communities. When the original Durbin Amendment went into effect, the Government Accountability Office found that there has been an annual transfer of $1 to $3 billion a year from low-income households to large retailers. So while we're there with our credit union hats on, we know that members are looking at this from their political perspective. So while we don't want to be too political, we can definitely play to their preferences to win them over. Also, one of the biggest things when it comes to interchange, I know we all talk about this ad nauseum, is the fraud. You guys are eating the cost of fraud. With the original Durbin Amendment, we saw a 60% increase in debit card fraud. And under the new bill, we're expected to see a $6 billion a year increase in additional fraud. And so this, again, we mentioned that this issue ties perfectly into our next one. So you'll see our ask of offices here is to reject efforts to move this bill. In the Senate, we have been successful in getting holds placed on this bill when proponents have tried to bring it up on the floor, now 3 times in the last year and a half. So just know that we're going to need help. And something I'll mention too, you may hear from members, I'm not on banking, I'm not on financial services, I wouldn't have the opportunity to move this. Again, Durbin is moving this in judiciary. He's trying to move this on an appropriations bill, which affects our appropriations members. There was a chance a time when they try to move this on the farm bill, which impacts our ag members. So everybody, regardless of committee, could be impactful on this bill. So the way this ties into our next issue, we have been asking for fraud relief, for national data security standards, really since the massive and before the massive Target data breach. We would love to see merchants forced to comply with Gramm-Leach-Bliley, just as financial institutions are, to ensure that they're securing their data the same way that you guys are. And while this is not everything and more we want, it's a step in the right direction. And it is a big step in getting Congress to recognize that financial fraud is growing rampant, and that you all are on the front lines, whether that's educating that consumers, eating the cost. So something that we have worked with our delegation on is some financial services and general government language. So again, I mentioned there are 12 appropriations bills and a regular order calendar that move to fund the government for the next fiscal year. One of those is the FSGG bill. You will never hear it called the full financial services and general government bill. So just remember FSGG, and it's a lot easier. We have gotten language included in the Senate, and it has been supported by a number of appropriators in the House to include as well in the final package that's going to get voted on ahead of the March 8th deadline, that urges Treasury to establish a public-private partnership and then that partnership is going to be comprised of financial institutions, regulators, consumer protection agencies, law enforcement, trade associations, and other stakeholders, with the goal of educating consumers on fraud schemes, encouraging innovation and counter fraud technologies, and to develop best practices moving forward. Again, it's not everything we want, but it's a step in the right direction. And it's the first time we've really gotten Congress to move on something fraud related like this. So right now we are under the assumption that this is going to get included based on the significant support behind it in both the House and the Senate. So by the time that we are on the Hill, March 6th, that Wednesday, this language will likely be baked in the bill. And so we will be asking members when they go to vote on the FSGG appropriations bill that they support this, when they support the bill, but because of the language specifically that allows credit unions to protect consumers against fraud. So any questions on these two? I know I'm moving fast. Okay. So these next two issues are also related. One, there has been a package of bills pertaining to the CFPB that seek to increase congressional oversight over the agency. I do want to mention that Senator Rick Scott in Florida has has sponsored the Senate bill. One of the Senate bills, like I said, there's three. One of the bills, which they've kind of been married together, and they will move together. But the first bill, right now, the CFPB is funded through the Federal Reserve as opposed to the traditional appropriations process like most other agencies. Right now, that's under review by the Supreme Court. They're expected to make a decision by the summertime. Right now, Congress is waiting to see what happens with the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court does not rule it unconstitutional, then I think we're going to see this legislation move. It's already passed House Financial Services Committee. We want to grow support for this because, of course, if the CFPB is not accountable to Congress, they're not accountable to you all. And we've seen some really concerning rules and narratives coming from the CFPB. And so we want to increase accountability in government. In addition, one of the bills would create a 5-member bipartisan board of directors, which is consistent with every other financial regulator. Look at the NCUA, we've got a 3-member bipartisan board. And that would ensure that the decision-making process is more deliberative as opposed to the single-led director we have now. And then again, it requires that no more than 3 members shall be from the same political party. And then lastly, the last bill, this is the one sponsored by Senator Scott, requires the Senate to confirm a CFPB Inspector General, which would increase the Senate's oversight of the agency. So we want to grow support for these bills. This is sort of a partisan issue. So while Republicans are really big on reining in regulatory agencies right now, especially under this administration, Democrats are going to be more defensive of the administration and certain regulators. So on this one, I would use this as more of an educational opportunity to educate on the bills. Do not make it super partisan, but just talk about the bills and why we think they're important, and use it as a segue into the next topic, which is reversing efforts by the CFPB to restrict access to overdraft services. So you all heard from us. You guys have seen the rule. The CFPB is attempting to cap overdraft fees, which they have lovingly labeled junk fees. But we want to really educate Congress on the necessity of these services. Let's get away from the words fees. Let's talk about services. We got some great data from you all in response to our overdraft survey last year. Thank you all for responding. Thanks to our overdraft members who are on this call. But really use this as an opportunity to discuss the many, many changes that have been made to overdraft services without legislation and without regulation. Credit unions are naturally working to meet the needs of consumers. So really use this as an educational opportunity. And I think the biggest thing that stood out to me in that survey I just mentioned was that when talking with members, there's a clear understanding of what the service is. Members are opting into it, but there's a desire for it. I've heard from many of you who have very real and personal stories with members who that is the sole reasoning for opening an account is having access to those critical overdraft services. So in order to really to weigh in and protect these services. We are working with members of Congress right now. The House Financial Services Chairman Patrick McHenry is drafting a letter, and that's why you see Senator TBD right here, because he has asked us to hold off. So we're at his will right now, but they are working to finalize a letter to the CFPB calling for the reversal of that rule. Similarly, we're working with members to reverse the Federal Reserve's Reg II debit card interchange fee cap as well. We'll get to that in a little bit, but definitely want to use this. This is something that, again, talk about the impact to low-income communities, how restricting access is going to turn consumers to predatory payday lenders. And so it's critical that they retain this access. So again, sort of a partisan issue, but serving consumers, ensuring they've got the most affordable and responsible financial services, that is not a partisan issue. And that is something that everyone should be able to get behind. We've gotten the NAACP, urban leagues, we're working with like SPLCU and groups like that to weigh in on the necessity of these services. Any questions? Okay. Well, then to end it on a light note, we have got our Veteran Member Business Loan Act. This is a very positive bill. We've got a lot of members among our delegation. Y'all will see their committees on the app, as Matt mentioned, who are on Veteran Affairs or Armed Services committees. And so due to the statutory cap, you all know credit unions are unable to lend more than 12.25% of their assets. And so this legislation exempts loans made to veteran-owned businesses from the cap. And something that is important to hit here is that nearly a quarter of transitioning veterans have indicated that their number one issue with starting a business is access to capital. And so here you go, you can see too, 60% of veteran-owned businesses report facing a financial shortfall. And so while big banks are really looking to give those high dollar loans, the big loans, the small dollar loans, that's really your bread and butter. And so this would allow us to better serve those who have served us so faithfully. So it's a good feel good bill. Any questions on this? This is our last priority. All righty. So we will touch on these very lightly given time. But again, we mentioned earlier the regulatory meetings we have got confirmed so far. The things that I really want to hit with you all are pertain to the NCUA, because we have seen, is that a question? Maybe not yet. Alrighty, so the NCUA has released their newest supervisory priorities. Many of those are of extreme interest, especially overdraft, consumer financial protection. The NCUA is really going to be taking a closer look at overdraft practices and exams. In addition, there is soon going to be a requirement, the timeline is uncertain, but they have the goal of requiring federal credit unions over $1 billion in assets to report on overdraft and NSF fee income. And given the CFPB director Chopra's comments about junk fees, as well as the president's, as an industry, we should be very cautious about what we are putting out there and what we are allowing to be perceived as a potential junk fee, especially, again, understanding that this is a service and it is a need and a want of consumers. So, you know, we really hope we can look to the NCUA as our federal regulator to be our partner on that, and be mindful of the way they're framing these things. Fair lending examiners are going to be looking at increased risk factors when evaluating lending practices. And again, increasing the threshold of credit unions who are really going to be facing additional exam scrutiny. Again, I mentioned that $7 billion and up threshold, not just those over the ones threshold. Information security and third-party vendor authority are also priorities. And while we are also committed to cybersecurity and want to cut down on fraud and counter bad actors, we do have concerns about broadly or overly broad vendor authority. If the NCUA is truly interested in information security, as they have mentioned, then tailor the legislation and the language down to that. And we're happy to work with them on language, as several of our state regulators have this access currently. Interest rate flexibility, given the rate environment is still uncertain. We want to, the NCUA has until September 10th of this year to either maintain or adjust the 18% interest rate ceiling. Otherwise, it will go down to 15%. And so we support a floating rate cap to ensure that you all can continue to navigate the uncertain rate environment. The Federal Reserve, I mentioned that earlier, they have got a proposal seeking to regulate debit card interchange fees. I'm going to speak fast here because we've got a few more slides, but I promise we'll save time for questions. So the Federal Reserve is seeking to reduce debit interchange fees by 28%. And the reason we're sharing this information with you is because while we hope that we do get a meeting confirmed with the Fed, in the case we don't, we do have a Hill letter circulating that is similar to the CFPB letter we just mentioned, that calls on the Fed to reverse this proposal, understanding the impact on low income and underserved communities. And again, we mentioned that the transfer of wealth essentially from low income households to large retailers. Unfortunately, merchants have had success in lobbying the Federal Reserve because under the Dodd-Frank Act, they were granted the or requested to continuously assess the base component fee. And so that is what we're seeing here. We are lobbying them hard against this and getting, again, the Hill to weigh in, other stakeholders. But again, there is a Hill letter being circulated right now. The reason it's not on our legislative priorities is because the deadline to sign on is Tuesday, March 5th, the day before we're on the Hill. And that is because Chairman Powell will be testifying before House Financial Services the Wednesday that we're on the Hill. So again, there's a lot going on. And we have been weighing in heavily with our delegation, but there is a chance they bring this up to you. And in the case they do, again, regardless of threshold, we know there's going to be a trickle-down effect here. And this is going to limit the ability of financial institutions to serve consumers with those low to no cost services. So we just want to make sure that you guys are aware of this in case it does get brought up, because it is very much there is the potential for that to happen. All righty. And we are going to turn it over to Natalie Reiner, who leads all of our fundraising and political strategy, before turning it over to you all for questions.
I'll be super quick with this. As Grace said, we will not be talking about fundraising on the Hill, but there is a fundraising element to GAC, so I just quickly wanted to touch on that. So this year for our QLAC sweepstakes giveaway item, we are going to be doing a $200 Amazon gift card for each state. So if you make a donation at any time during GAC, you'll be entered to win that gift card. So come visit us at any of the receptions. We will have dip jars from QLAC there, and you can make a donation to enter. So obviously everyone knows this year is an election year. I'm sure everyone is very well aware from the ads and from all of us. It's a very expensive time of year for us. So PAC support is extremely important this year, as more than ever, I feel like this year. So we really appreciate everyone's continued PAC support. We had a great year last year for fundraising, and we're really hoping to keep that drumbeat up this year. So we just really appreciate everyone's support, and I look forward to seeing everyone in DC. Thank you, Matt, for that link in the chat. You can also donate right here.
Yes, never too early.
Yes.
Here is our contact information. Again, this will be sent out after the call. Hopefully you have heard from me by now. So hopefully you have our information, but now I want to open it up to all of you. What questions do you have? What can we do to help you, to better prepare you? What have we missed? And that was fast, I know, so please don't remind me. I'm just kidding. Alrighty, well, if there is nothing else, we are going to transition into the team lead webinar. Thank you, Tina. So if anyone would like to be a team lead to help tee up the conversation, transition from issue to issue, and I should also add that an LSCU staffer will also be in every single meeting. So we're there to help. Hopefully you won't get any hard questions, but y'all are the experts. So I know that if you guys do get asked a question, y'all know how to answer it best. But just know that we're there. We're happy to help and just excited to make an impact alongside you all. So if anyone is interested in being a team lead, or if you've already signed up, please stay on and we will transition in just a few minutes. But otherwise, appreciate you all making time. Thank you.
Yeah. And everybody that stays on, or as you're on the way out the door in the app, I meant to mention earlier, there is a things to do in DC this year, because we know that you guys, some folks bring their family. So we broke out a bunch of activities in DC that you can do, and we put in the associated costs, because there's a lot of things in DC that you can do for free. So if you have a chance, and your significant other or whoever comes with you wants to go somewhere specific, hopefully they're in there and you'll be able to go to the website and see what's going on, or all that, or just have an idea of what to do in DC.
Yes, if you haven't been to DC, fantastic city, so much to do, so much history. And if that's not enough, there's so much conference stuff for you to do as well.